So it has been my tradition the past several years on the first Sunday-ish of each new year to offer a forward-looking sermon expressing some thoughts about the state of Unitarian Universalism and some hopes for its future. So in that vein today, I want to share 3 wishes for the near future of Unitarian Universalism to carry it into the 21st century. And these are necessarily wishes for UUI as well, because you all participate in this shared adventure we call Unitarian Universalism. But before we get to my 3 wishes, I want to return again to our reading for today to give us a little bit of spiritual grounding and context. This is a charm for hope, writes the Reverend Teresa Soto. The first thing to do is to tie a string around your finger. Remember that you are not alone. Think of the ways that our best shared futures are braided inextricably with your own present and your own destiny. The second thing is to untie the string and let the knots and tightness fall away. Let the burden of bleakness roll off your sore shoulders. Fortunately for all of us, we have one response: to remain together through awkward times and happy ones. We remember and we find our resolve in one another. So to remain together. The word religion, it is said, comes from the Latin religere, meaning to bind together. And in the Unitarian Universalist understanding of the value of interdependence, one of our core values, interdependence, this is not so much a binding as a weaving. We are a people who seek to be woven together, not bound but braided. Because like the braided vines, we know we are stronger and more resilient together. And so UU congregations like UUI are communities of people who have made a commitment to remain together, to journey together side by side through awkward times and happy ones. This is our charm for hope, that we are not alone. And we are not alone. But we are a little, and how to say this politely, thin on the ground, we Unitarian Universalists. And it was not always so, or at least it was not always expected to be so. In 1822, when Unitarianism was just getting off the ground in Boston, Thomas Jefferson famously predicted that Unitarianism would be, within one generation, the majority religion of the United States. He was wrong by a lot, both in timing and in numbers. So in 1961, when the Unitarians and the Universalists merged to form this new thing called the Unitarian Universalist Association, or the UUA, there were 180 million people in the United States, 1961, and about 150,000 members of the UUA. That's 0.083% of the population. So 140 years later, not yet the general religion of the United States. And today, 60-ish years later, there are 330 million people in these United States and about 150,000 members of the UUA, or 0.045% of the population. Thus concludes the math portion of today's sermon. But the point is, we UUs are a small group of people. And the good news is that over the last 60 years, our numbers have been steady, where many other denominations have experienced precipitous decline in membership. The bad news is that the country has been growing the whole time. So we are proportionally getting smaller. No one would mistake us for the general religion of the United States. There are about 1,000 UU congregations in the entire United States. There are about 10,000 non-UU churches just in Indiana. But historically speaking, Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists have tended to have a cultural impact all out of proportion to our number, a cultural impact which belies our size. If you look at any progressive movement in history that you care to name, secular public schooling, the kindergarten movement, prison reform, reform of mental health institutions, abolitionism, nursing, women's suffrage, children's welfare, freedom of speech, separation of church and state, the prevention of animal cruelty, world peace, workers' rights, environmentalism, religious toleration, economic justice, the teaching of evolution, access to birth control, reproductive justice, immigration rights, marriage equality, anti-racism, and on and on. If you look at any progressive movement advancing liberal values of freedom, equality, human dignity, self-determination, you will find Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists in the lead, supporting the cause, fighting the good fight, way out of proportion to their presence in the general population. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called, yeah, that's sure. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called on America's clergy in the North to come to Selma, more UU ministers answered that call proportionally than any other denomination, and it was a UU minister, the Reverend James Reeb, and a UU layperson, Leola Viuso, who were martyred at Selma. Now here's a more fun bit of trivia. There are 3 Unitarian Universalists in the House of Representatives right now. And that may not seem like a big number, but proportionately speaking, relative to our population, that's more than 12 times the number of representatives there should be. There should be like one Unitarian Universalist leg propped up against a wall somewhere in the House chamber, right? And we have 3 whole people, 3 entire bodies. And in part, I think that UUs have tended to have a big impact in their community, in part because historically there's been a lot of collective privilege within our congregations. There's no denying that. But also, we have a religious tradition that is very focused on action, on making a difference in the world. Right? We say ours is a religion of deeds, not creeds. As a humanist tradition, we say we must be the change we're looking for. There's nothing that is fixed, there's nothing that is foreordained, and there is no one coming to save us but us. And here at UUI, we say love is the spirit of this church, but service is its law. We want to make a difference in the world, and we do. And that's a good thing, because the world needs our vision and it needs our values now more than ever. And the world also specifically needs UU communities more than ever. Not just what we do out there, but what we're building together in here. Because UU congregations are special places. This is a special place where people can know and experience their unassailable worth and dignity, where people can know they are worthy of love, not just accepted, but celebrated in their singular expression of what it is to be human, in your singular expression of what it is to be human, where people can come together in an atmosphere of freedom and encouragement and acceptance and questioning and grow their own souls. A place where we seek to dismantle racism and other oppressions for ourselves and for others. A place where people can find peace, comfort, compassion, art, music, beauty, kindness, without dogma or orthodoxy or condemnation, but with coffee and snacks. And the community that we're building in here is a model for what we're trying to build out there. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a life-giving thing. Sometimes it's literally a life-saving thing. And the world needs more life-giving, life-saving places. So my wish for Unitarian Universalism, my first wish, is that we grow as a movement in the 21st century. And that could look like more congregations being planted, or more people finding their way to our existing congregations, or ideally both. And that's, of course, easier said than done, right? If there were a magic trick to growing a church, and if anyone knew what that magic trick was, almost every church would be growing. But being 0.045% of the population means there's a lot of room to grow without necessarily being that brilliant at it. If 1 in every 1,000 Americans overnight started attending a UU congregation, our numbers would double. And I don't have a magic answer to growing either, but I think that one thing that Unitarian Universalists as a whole can get better at that would be pro-growth is just inviting people in. UU congregations tend to self-isolate a little bit. In the second half of the 20th century, there was a big movement of our congregations away from urban centers out into the suburbs, often into incredibly beautiful and serene and wooded places that speak to our reverence for nature and beauty, but they aren't necessarily on bus lines. or that easy to stumble across. They're not very accessible to population centers. So just as one example that I offer with all due love and respect, I was volunteering at the Boulevard Food Place Pantry this fall. UUI has a great partnership with the Boulevard Place Food Pantry. I was volunteering there, and the food pantry is run by the St. Vincent de Paul Society. So a lot of the volunteers come from different churches. So one of the things that we say when we meet each other is like, what church do you go to? So I was asked by another volunteer, what church do you go to? And I said, oh, I'm the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis. And he said, oh, okay, yeah, I've heard of that church. Where is that at again? And I'm like, it's there. Like, it's right there. It's 2 blocks down the road from this place that you've been volunteering at for like how many years? And I'm not saying anything that a lot of people, including your board, aren't already aware of. UUI is a little hard to find, even in our own neighborhood. And the board, your board, has made increasing UUI's connection to the neighborhood a goal. So it's in process, and that's a beautiful thing. And I hope someday UUI has a big sign on 42nd Street, the high traffic street, saying, hey, we're here, come check us out. And I hope that UU start planting churches in downtown areas again. Once upon a time, All Souls Unitarian was downtown. And I would love for there to be a UU congregation in downtown Indy someday. Extension campuses are a thing. And I hope UUI's virtual presence, you Zoomers out there, our online presence continues to grow also, so that more people can find us in virtual spaces. And I say this not because I think everyone should be a UU, of course not. UUs are sometimes reluctant to invite people into their congregations because we don't want to seem to be evangelizing, we don't want to push our religion on other people, I get that. But it's not about pushing UU or the idea that everyone should be UU. Because not everything is for everyone. UU is not for everyone. But for some people, this is exactly the thing they were looking for. And the reason they're not here already is because they don't know it exists. And how sad is that? And who's going to tell them we exist if not us? So my wish for Unitarian Universalism is that it grow. And my wish for UUI as you enter this upcoming time of transition is to keep inviting people in. Remember how special this community is and how needed it is, and keep inviting people in. This is our charm for hope. We need each other, and we choose to be woven into community. And there's a tension here, which brings me to my second wish for UUI and for Unitarian Universalism. Because we honor interdependence and we aim to be a braided people, and yet we also highly value our independence as well. And so UU congregations have a tendency to isolate, and they also have a tendency to go it alone. We're an independent bunch. Congregational polity, the independence of each congregation as an institution, goes all the way back to the beginnings of our history. So my second wish for Unitarian Universalism is that we risk some of our independence a little and get a little bit better at collaborating with each other. That we consider what interdependence means, not just within our congregations, but between our congregations, and that we risk being a little more woven together as a movement. Now, I say that church is very local. That is part of its charm, right? Every congregation has its own traditions, its own way of doing things, its quirks that come out of its story. That's a beautiful thing. That's part of the fun. But with the internet, in particular, our congregations now have the capability to collaborate and resource share and connect in ways previously undreamt of. It is easier to collaborate than it has ever been, and we should lean into that and build stronger relationships with each other in cyberspace and on the ground, not so that we can all be the same, not so that we can homogenize, but so that we can free up time and energy to focus on the things that really make us unique and different, and free up time and energy to better serve our locales, the people and places around us. This is already happening with UU ministers. We're connected on Facebook and resource share all the time. And I'm a better minister because I have access to like 1,000 colleagues, literally 1,000 colleagues who are sharing ideas and wisdom and plans and readings and liturgies and on and on. Unitarian Universalist ministry today is a collective endeavor. And don't get me wrong, we all have our own take on things, and we do not always agree, but we resource each other, and we support each other, and we are collectively stronger because of it. And I would love to see our congregations more connected like this. And that is also starting to happen. For example, the Mid-America region of the UUA, of which we are a member, has in the last few years started to bring together board presidents in forums where they can resource share and collaborate. And COVID has accelerated this trend because COVID has made it clearer than ever how much we need each other. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, president of the UUA, says this is no time for casual faith and no time to go it alone, as individuals or as congregations. So another example, during COVID, when all the worship services were 100% online, a group of 3 churches in the Washington, D.C. area formed something they called the Potomac Partnership. And they took turns offering online services for the entire group, with congregations sort of rotating around the congregations that they would attend. And post-COVID, they've continued to collaborate. They share religious education offerings. They share lay leadership resources and trainings, music events, and more. And this is relatively uncharted territory. So what I would say is start small, try things out, look for opportunities to build relationships with other UU congregations in the area or online, and have fun with it. Have fun with it. And that brings us to my third wish for Unitarian Universalism: have fun. Because it has been a lot these past few years, and if we're being honest, it was a lot even before that. People are tired. People are overburdened. The world is still very weird and uncertain. How many votes to get to a Speaker of the House? The world is still very weird and uncertain. So let church be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Have fun together, right? Ground the life of the congregation in joy. Make fun, joy, laughter, connection a priority. One of my mentors, we newer UU ministers have mentors. One of my mentors told me that at his congregation, there's a team whose entire job is just to be ambassadors of fun for the congregation. That's their job, to just think up ways to make church more fun, to make it a joy to be a part of the life of the congregation. And I happen to think that this is something that UUI already does very well. This congregation is a joyful bunch. You all really like each other. You really enjoy each other's company. I love that this congregation has had such a long relationship with the Indie Folk series. I love that the music committee sponsored a handbell concert just for fun and beauty. I love that the dining groups have started meeting again. And the RE program does fun very well. So if you want to learn how to do fun, look at what the RE program is doing. But we're all still coming back together out of the disruption of COVID. We're a new kind of congregation now, or at least we aspire to be. We've committed to being this multi-platform community. Some of us on the campus, some of us online. So there's some newness here, right? Like, how do we create more fun online? What does that look like? How does UUI Online be a more joyous space? What does a joyous multi-platform event look like? I don't know the answer. I think we've just scratched the surface because it's all so new. But that's where the collaborating comes in, right? Because good ideas are abundant in UU spaces. And people are doing creative and innovative things in UU congregations all around the country. So let's become innovators of joy. Let's crowdsource celebration. And then let's collaborate in building joyful spaces and invite people in. So those are my wishes for UU in the 21st century, that our congregations be thriving, that we invite people into that thing, that we're growing together, knowing that we're building something life-saving and life-giving, building it with joy, building it together, and having an absolute blast all the while. This is a charm for hope, says the Reverend Teresa Soto. Remember that you are not alone. And so I say, invite people into this thing that we are building. Think of the ways that our best shared futures are braided inextricably. So I say, let's build it together. Let the burden of bleakness roll off your sore shoulders. So I say, let's build it with joy. because the world needs our vision and values like never before, and the world needs joy. Fortunately for all of us, reminds Reverend Teresa, we have one response: to remain together through awkward times and happy ones, to find our resolve in one another. May it be so, and amen.